may have one more mayoral candidate in Providence.
The Dan Yorke State of Mind program is brought to you in part by Lookout Rhode Island and Taco Comfort Solutions.
Welcome in. Nice to have you aboard. John Lombardi is a state representative, the former acting mayor in the city of Providence, and a very well-known figure, not only on Federal Hill, but throughout the city, and a guy that I think would be very viable as a candidate for mayor. Whether he steps into this race or not is still an open question, but he's been kind enough to join us tonight. We'll figure out as we go. Great to have you in. Thanks very much for joining us on this beautiful spring Monday. Unfortunately, we're still reeling from last week's news. I was out Thursday and Friday, so you saw former programs. Headlines like this are absolutely heartbreaking, one after the other. Just a killer. The president tweeting on this, you know, for the most part saying the right things, of course.
My administration is determined to do everything in our power to protect our students, secure our schools, and to keep weapons out of the hands of those who pose a threat to themselves and to others. Everyone must work together at every level of government to keep our children safe.
Words matter, actions matter more. I will tell you that here in Rhode Island, even late today, we taped the program in the early afternoon each day. Even Governor Raimondo and her campaign have decided to make this a political football, attacking Alan Fung, the Republican candidate, for his stances on gun control, blah blah blah. It's just the cycle just continues to keep repeating itself. Thankfully, we do have red flag legislation that is moving through the House of Representatives, something that reportedly was brainstormed on this program when Peter Nerona and I had a conversation that caught the attention of the Police Chiefs Association of Rhode Island. They tell me that. I didn't make it up. That's not fake news. I'm not looking for credit. I'm just looking for constructive behavior here. And one of the things that really struck me over the course of the weekend is that this loss of 10 lives in Texas quickly went to the second and third and fourth stories. It's almost as if we had a coping mechanism that we had to, you know, Parkland, Florida was too much, and this one is just another, and we're just going to move on, and I guess we're going to make this a part of daily risk of everyday life, and that's not good. I don't know what the answer is, but we need some deep psychological analysis of this entire situation. But we cannot continue to write the same political scripts. All right, let's move on here. Trump tweeting storms. It's just been unbelievable. Now he's literally waging war on the Justice Department. His own version of a Saturday Night Massacre is happening in front of us on some kind of a slow drip. Taking on his Justice Department is something that, well, it's extraordinary.
President Trump sent a tweet this weekend demanding an investigation into reports the FBI planted an informant into his presidential campaign.
If they were using somebody to engage the Trump campaign, was there judicial oversight?
Sources tell CBS News an FBI informant was instructed to make contact with at least 3 Trump campaign advisors, Carter Page, George Papadopoulos, and Sam Clovis, after the Bureau learned they had suspicious contacts with Russian officials.
Okay. Everything I have seen, it would have been negligent for the FBI not to take steps to protect the country in the midst of information it was receiving.
Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein has turned the investigation over to the Inspector General to investigate whether there was any impropriety. And Rosenstein said if anyone did infiltrate or surveil participants, we need to know about it.
Critics of the president are blasting him for making the demand, saying it's inappropriate given the Department of Justice's history of independence from the White House.
House Intelligence Committee Chair Devin Nunes first raised the issue with the DOJ, demanding all documents related to the informant. But officials rejected the request, warning his exposure could put the informant in danger.
I find it outrageous that the president's allies are in effect playing fast and loose with confidential information.
If the Inspector General finds evidence of criminal wrongdoing, he can turn it over to the DOJ for prosecution.
I mean, this is a game that Trump is playing, a hand that he is dishing out, which is extraordinary. He's doing everything he can to make everything that comes out of that Justice Department inconsequential. That no matter what they bring through whatever due process and investigative results they have, that none of it matters because all of it is a deep state activity that, you know, was corrupt from the get-go. And you know what? It is resonating. That thought is resonating with a significant amount of the population. You know, I had the chance to meet with old friends over the weekend, some very successful and affluent people, you know, that I grew up with, who are doing very well in their lives right now, who gave me a good tongue lashing, you know, over a couple of beers over the night, the idea that, you know, this Justice Department and the deep state never gave this guy a chance. And these aren't dumb people. These are really smart people. So the game he's playing, I don't think will win out in the end. But if this becomes a political process in Congress and some kind of impeachment and or trial, that's where the game is really going to be played, and that's where he's, you know, he's still got a heavy hand. This is incredible. All right, let's come home and one more time talk about the sports gambling situation here. In addition to the idea that the legislature more or less has the momentum to think that it's illegal right now to gamble sports-wise, we're going to take a little bit of a check with the judge, reportedly, on whether internet gambling into Twin River would be already constitutionally approved. The Senate President's really excited about this revenue stream last week.
We have two facilities here that I think that we can use for sports gaming almost immediately, and I'm hoping that will happen, and then we can look at other methods of sports gaming as far as internet gaming or any other kind of sports that take place in using satellite facilities and things like that. So that comes later, but this is something that we could do immediately.
Man, it's a race to get into sports gambling, all pun intended. How are you, my friend? Long time no see.
Very good. How you doing?
Good. State Representative John Lombardi. Before we get into mayoral stuff, I mean, you are a sitting member of the legislature and a veteran there now. What's your take on this sports gambling?
Well, it seems like there is a stomach for it. At first, I thought there was not a stomach for it, but since the governor has come out overwhelmingly for it, the Senate President, I've spoken to my colleagues on the House side, and there seems to be that the feeling is that there's a treasure trove of money that should be available. I think the only stumbling block may be that they would love to see that money be allocated towards schools. And that's the only thing I think is
we have never had, John, we've never had a dedicated revenue stream ever stick in this state. Why bother even with the exercise?
True. We certainly need the revenues, and but I think there will be some discussion about that.
Well, now that you've been in, how many terms now in the House?
My third one.
Third year. And you've been a student.
Third term.
Yeah, third term. I mean, you've been a student of government, the council, the council president, acting mayor, state representative. I mean, you've seen it all. The idea that we cannot compartmentalize the commitment to school funding on its own, and we have to tie this concept into kind of it blows my mind that we're unable to just walk and chew gum at the same time. Why can't we?
Well, you know, this is about leadership. This is about having the intestinal fortitude to say, this is how it's going to be. This is the way we're going to do it. And it's funny, Dan, because let's talk about parking meters for a minute and with regard to my neighborhood. The selling point for my neighborhood was the administration promised that we would be able to get some of those monies allocated from the parking meters back into the Atwells Avenue business community, and that never happened. But that was the selling point. So the point is something that we need to commit to, and if we're going to do it, let's do it. If not, let's call it, let's say what it is, which is go into the general fund and do what you need to do.
Do you think that that we've had adequate notice to the general electorate to go ahead and authorize October 1 gaming at Twin River and Tiverton? I mean, the three gaming's reference was what was in the advisory to the question. Nobody knew what the heck it was, though. You think we've had sufficient notice?
On its face, probably not. And more problematic, Dan, is that now you have the summer months coming. People will be going away. People will be on vacation. People will not be caring. I mean, I find in elections, for example, people start to be concerned locally, let's say the last week of August and the first 2 weeks of September. So on its face, probably not.
It's just going to happen in the fall?
It looks like it's on the fast track. You know, this may be a re-election type of issue.
Where will you stand?
I will stand for it.
You will stand for it?
Yeah, I will support it, yes.
Begrudgingly or
well,
aggressively?
I think that, Dan, let's be candid. I mean, you and me, we've traveled in different circles. Is it happening? Absolutely. Is it happening illegally? Absolutely. You're talking about $150 billion. Could Rhode Island use a piece of that? Absolutely. So I think it's there. Let's do what we need to do and figure out how we can utilize those monies, maybe for infrastructure repairs or whatever we have to do.
All right, when we come back, we'll talk about a potential candidacy for John Lombardi for mayor. Stay with us.
Seems a little bit excessive, but taking those trips, if they're going to benefit the people of Providence, I'm okay with that. But I just like to see what benefits. I'd like to, you know, use some of the technology he's talking about in innovation and show us when you're in China. Show us what you're doing in Guatemala, that you're not at, you know, Auntie, you know, his Tia's house or something. I want to see that he's doing something for the city of Providence.
Some reciprocal relationship with Guatemala City for products.
Yeah,
from that.
Yeah, that's a little questionable. Like I said, I'm not accusing him of anything. I'd love him to just show us that. And with all this, you know, we're supposed to be this innovative, you know, city. Let's see some of that.
All right, that was Kobe Dennis, the earliest candidate to announce he was running for mayor months ago, referring to Mayor Alorza being the subject of a Target 12 investigation on his travel. This is a little snippet of his response to Tim White, then we'll get John's reaction to it.
The mayor is actually out of town right now. He had a conference down in Austin, Texas.
Eventually made it that you were not here. You got here that night.
I got here at 4:30. That's not nighttime.
There was a press conference.
I got here in the middle of the storm.
I don't know what's more problematic for the mayor, responding to this travel thing or his skateboarding. I saw an online video that ran around this weekend of him taking quite the fall. You got to be smart not to get on that stuff anymore. I mean, you and I are we're not dumb enough to get on a skateboard.
From your lips to God's ears.
Did you see this travel thing for the mayor as problematic?
Yes. I think it is problematic because I think there's so many issues in the city. We did a focus group recently, Dan. We commissioned a poll.
Who we?
Myself. We commissioned.
Who we? You and your supporters?
And some of my key
friends of John Lombardi. Do you have an active account right now?
Yes, I do.
Exploring the mayoral run?
Yes.
Okay.
We commissioned Zogby, was one of the best pollsters in the country.
Okay.
Oh, yes, I did. We expended over $25,000. We had focus groups. And that was the biggest concern with this mayor, that he's not accessible, he's not available, he doesn't listen. In the focus group, we asked 15 people to attend, 12 attended, and Mr. Zogby indicated that was a good number. And what was very interesting was that of the 12 people that showed up, not one said they would vote for him for re-election. There was 3 Latinos, 2 blacks, ranging in age from 23 to about 75. A very interesting question was they supported a person who was no longer with us on a vote for 7-5, and against the mayor. So he.
You talking about Buddy?
That's correct.
They were asked. Well, how was that question posed?
Well, it was asked basically if it were between Buddy and this, and the vote went 6-5. 1 not voting, leaning towards Buddy Cianci.
Did they have enough East Side? This is crazy. Did they? God rest his soul, of course, but he'd enjoy this conversation, I can promise you. Was the East Side well represented in your focus group? Because that's what took them out last time.
There were 2 people from the East Side.
Yeah, I'd weighted a little heavier because they came out in droves. But it is an indication of what you're saying is some discontent with Mayor Alorza.
A lot of discontent.
So what does it tell you overall? Forget the travel thing. The travel thing for me, I mean, I'm not running, so my opinion doesn't matter. But, you know, at least it's not an abuse of taxpayer money. Most of the money has been funded, you know, outside the direct taxpayer auspice. But he does like to wander around a little bit. Do you think that's a focus issue for him?
I think it is. Okay. I think, according to the focus group, he's dysfunctional, can't get basic questions answered, and they're looking for a person of action. What they're basically looking for, and for a lack of a better way of defining it, they're looking for a person with Buddy Cianci's way of doing the governance of the city of Providence, who's honest, if I can be so bold and simple.
An honest version of Buddy Cianci.
That's correct.
Saying that is provocative in and of itself.
It certainly is.
Well, you had a long history with Buddy as well, so I mean, there's a lot of, you know, I've now been around long enough to be able to chronicle a lot of it. But what does this all tell you? What's it all tell you? That you want to do this?
It's certainly, what's very interesting, Dan, in this is the fact today 2 leaders in the Latino community have reached out to me. For the past 3 weeks, Latinas from throughout the city, an inordinate amount of Latinas calling me. You got to run, you got to run, you got to run. There's just a disconnect and a lack of communication between the administration and people throughout the city of Providence. You talk about the East Side. I'll tell you, I spent a lot of time on the East Side in the past 10 years especially. I attend a gym there on the East Side, do some of my shopping, my business there. It's buyer's remorse. It is definitely buyer's remorse, and I do a lot of exercising on the East Side. We walk, we power walk it. People are coming out of the houses saying, you got to run against this guy, you got to run against this guy. It's just basic services that need to be delivered.
All right, when we come back, we'll talk about motive for running, because I've always found that when candidates say they're being recruited, it's not the right reason. Stay with us.
The objective is to be mayor of Providence. The objective is to bring a better education system to the students in Providence, to make a better community.
That's why we hire superintendents.
They need sometimes a little bit of guidance and a little bit of the support from the office.
That is Mr. DeRobio, another candidate, former high-ranking official in the Providence school systems, who I think is a very smart guy, just really hasn't shown a lot of what is usually the mayoral candidate timber that's necessary organizationally or financially. So I'm not sure what happens there. So we have 3 candidates, the mayor looking for re-election, Kobe Dennis, Bob DeRobio, and John Lombardi is spending campaign money testing the waters, which means you're really serious. You know, John, when people say, hey, you know, people are asking me, they're asking me. I mean, it's always good to know that there's a base of support out there, but it has to be in your gut. It has to be in your heart. It has to be something you want to do because you want to lead, right? Isn't that the right motive?
Yes.
All right, so what tells you that you're leaning in that direction? What is it about leading the city of Providence that's still burning inside you?
It's always been a passion of mine, Dan. As you know, I was there for 4 months. I think we did a tremendous job. We did with 24 people that the previous administration we thought was not doing with 52 people. This is about hard work. This is about, you know, spending 12 to 15 hours a day, 7 days a week, administering the and attending to the needs of the 180 million people, $747 million budget, 24/7, interacting with various levels of government, other cities, other towns, General Assembly, and that is something that I do every day. I'm certainly well aware of it. Certainly very familiar with the various departments, many of the employee unions. I have a great relationship.
What's your vision? What's your vision? The city of Providence becomes what under your leadership?
Well, I think what it becomes under my vision, very simply, is that, you know, we are a city state, and we become the true leaders in the state into, you know, how to do things better, how to do things more efficiently, how to work in conjunction with you know, other cities and towns. You know, talk about regionalization, talk about items that would save the city. We could expend those monies on repairing the schools, on infrastructure repairs. So, for example, they're talking about $1 billion for the schools in the state of Rhode Island. Dan, quite frankly, we need $1 billion just for Providence.
Where are you going to get it?
Well, and that's what we need to do. That's what we need to talk about, because if we're not going to talk about this together, I mean, 250, by the time we utilize that 250,
it's gone.
It's gone.
It's already, the first round's gone.
It's
no
already
one's
gone.
reporting that. I mean, it's being reported, but no one's consolidating that. East Providence is getting most of it. I mean, it's almost gone.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
So, and the next round in another few years, it'll be gone too. Sure. I mean, everyone's in the queue already for that money. The governor keeps running around like there's some kind of $1 billion. By the way, there's already $500 million of that money's already in the budget.
Sure.
So, you know, who's getting who?
And in 4 years, many of the schools that may not be in disrepair will be in disrepair.
All right, some quick hitters. Water supply sale, yes or no?
Absolutely not.
Why not?
Well, number one, the ratepayer owns that. That issue has been kicked around ad infinitum since Buddy Cianci. The mayor knows that. The Providence delegation met with his people the other day, told them that we would not support that.
Pension.
Yes, amortization, going forward, lengthening the age, a greater contribution, some type of a hybrid system, doing what the state does.
Meaning reform.
Exactly.
Tough to run on
and tough and negotiating, but not unilaterally with the unions. The unions are prepared to do that.
Superman building.
We need to salvage that. We have a great history. Preservation, historical is very, very important. Certainly in my neighborhood, I've always stood for that. This is a marketing issue.
You like that big, tall building that they're talking about at 195?
No, I think again, history, preservation, and working to cutting that to make it feasible, but not in the current.
Do we have enough cops?
No, we do not. We'll never have enough cops. But what we're going to do is we have 425. I think we're allotted 475. What we need to do is make sure that we hire police officers from within the city of Providence.
Speed cameras, yes or no?
Well, I'm kind of, you know, I'm a municipal court judge. I can tell you this here. That was probably the worst rollout in the history of rollouts. When you look up how not to roll out in the Funkin' Wagnalls, you will see the speed cameras in Providence.
I know you love the city.
Yes, I do.
And that was pretty good rapid fire. So what's your timeline? What's it going to take? And does it come right down to money more than anything else?
Dan, that's the only thing holding me back. I have $100,000. I probably need $5. The mayor will have $750 to $1 million, probably closer to $1 million. Much of his work, much of the money.
How are you going to get to $500,000?
Well, there's believe it or not, there's several business people that have approached me in the last week or two who.
And then you're beholden.
Well, not really. I think that these groups and these individuals have the city's best interest in mind.
On a scale of 0 to 10, 10 being absolutely, how far are you?
I'd say 7.5.
You want to do it?
Absolutely. I had the fires in my belly.
You're sitting here raising money right now.
Absolutely.
With your presentation. You know, dummy. Never have been. Well, I wish you the best of luck. I think you would be a plus for the community back into the race. A little bit of old school, a little bit of new school. John Lombardi, thank you.
Thank you, Dick.
Final word and we come back. All right, listen, amongst the things that we're going to be tackling over the course of the week, I know we're already all scheduled. I believe coming up in the middle of the week, we'll have Ken Block and Rob Cody from the City of Warwick. They're doing a really interesting analysis of the cost of firefighting there. Now look, in the City of Providence, I stood with the firefighter union in the way Mayor Lorza had rolled out his platoon move from 4 to 3. Yet it's a conversation that needs to be had, and I think their study is going to bring to a head the conversation for a lot of communities across the state of Rhode Island as to whether it really is financially efficient and feasible to change kind of a culture of working in the fire department. So make a note of that. That's later in the week. We'll see you on the radio at 3 on WPRO tomorrow. Thanks for tuning in. Bye.